Breaking news. We have an unannounced raid of Mar-A-Lago, the current home of the former president of the United States, Donald Trump. This is not only unprecedented, but it is also a sign that perhaps the advancement in the DOJ's plans have gone much further than people anticipated and expected. One of the primary concerns that we've heard from members of Congress and analysts and former people who have actually worked in the White House and those victims from the insurrection January 6th is perhaps things were not moving as quickly as expected. This is a sign that perhaps the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland have gotten much more serious about this investigation than we initially expected. Joining me right now is Kurt Bardella, advisor to the DNC and the DCC, and Dana Milbank, columnist for The Washington Post and author of The Destructionist, the 25-year crack-up of the Republican Party, which comes out tomorrow. Kurt, I'll start with you. Just your immediate reaction to this unannounced raid on Mar-A-Lago. Are you surprised? Are you thrilled? Are you jumping up and down? What was your immediate reaction?
I guess we know why so many Republicans were talking about defunding the FBI at CPAC over the last weekend. I think that this is unprecedented. I mean, we cannot underscore and understate the fact that the former president of the United States' residence, if you will, just got raided by the FBI. I think that as we look ahead at the political consequences potentially, I think any Republican who has spent their time and energy on the campaign trail sucking up to Donald Trump, begging for his support, begging for his endorsement, they do so at their peril, because whatever happens next, I don't think it's going to be particularly good. And I don't know how you get to campaign on being the law and order party. Well, perhaps the single person that has the biggest sway in your party is under this type of scrutiny from the FBI.
Unlike Vegas, what happens in Mar-A-Lago may not stay in Mar-A-Lago after this investigation. Dana, as Kurt sort of suggested, people who are politically connected to Trump, all the Republican members of Congress who go down to Mar-A-Lago to kiss the ring, do you think right now they may be concerned? Are they thinking, did I leave my business card in the wrong bathroom? Did I leave this document here or there? I mean, are there members of Congress right now who are checking their schedules to see how much time they spent there and whether they left anything incriminating?
Well, it may well be, and it's a testament to Donald Trump's malfeasance that there are any number of things that this could be about. There are so many potential avenues of criminality and so many different people involved. So there's a whole lot of reason for a lot of people to be concerned. But there's a reason we should all be concerned right at this moment, because you can see in Donald Trump's response to this that he is ready to turn up the heat, to turn people against the FBI, against the Justice Department, against the government. So even though it would be a normal procedure for the Justice Department to proceed in some secrecy, I think there's a real public interest in them letting the public know what's going on, getting some information out there, because we're in a potentially dangerous period of time if Donald Trump, and possibly with support of Republicans, is going to use this to turn his people against the investigators, against the FBI, against the government. We know what happens when this anti-government rhetoric gets out of hand, and it can often be violent.
Dana, one of the sort of key theories in your book, The Destructionist, is talking about the fact that, you trace this back to Newt Gingrich. You trace this back to the contract with America. That is where the beginning of the Republican Party sort of going off the rails begins. With that in mind, it's been almost 30 years since we saw that sort of transformation. What do you think is a potential worst case scenario here? In August of 2018, 2 years into the Trump administration, he was tweeting about how he wanted Jeff Sessions to stop the witch hunt. He has now shown himself capable of literally raising a terrorist army to attack the Capitol. Do you think that this raid on his home will lead to domestic violence, domestic terror, or any other sort of violent reaction as he claims that he's been violated in his home?
Well, Jason, God willing, it won't, but that is exactly the concern right now. And if you look at, to go back to the 90s, as you just were, before the Oklahoma City bombing, there was a whole lot of things building up to that, a lot of smaller skirmishes and incidents, and a whole lot of heated rhetoric coming from Republican lawmakers, from conservative talk radio at the time. And it got heated and more heated, and then we had that catastrophic event. I think some people who follow these things closely closely are worried that we've been building towards just such a moment right now with the rising amount of violence we've seen from right-wing domestic terrorists who are the lion's share of domestic terrorism right now. So that is a very real concern. But I think a lot of it will hinge on the reaction Trump has. Is he going to sic his army of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers on the United States government again? And what happens with his potential rivals and elected Republicans in Congress? Do they join in this anti-government fervor?
Well, speaking of people to help us out, standing back and standing by is former FBI official Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, thank you so much for joining us this evening on the Readout. You were the person that I wanted to talk to about this. What is the significance? I mean, you were in the FBI. I'm sure there are agents who woke up this morning and were thinking, I am going to be raiding the former president's house. That's got to be difficult, regardless of how you feel about the former president of the United States. What do you think the attitudes are going on in the FBI right now? Are people, are they concerned that they think, oh my gosh, this is the beginning of what could be an absolutely serious investigation? Were people aware of this all along and were like, hey, this is just step one in finally bringing this person down? What do you think is sort of the internal rhetoric going on at the FBI right now about this unannounced raid?
So, Jason, yeah, not only did I spend 25 years in the FBI, but I spent a significant portion of it in the Miami field office, which is responsible, of course, for West Palm Beach and the Mar-A-Lago location. So, look, not a lot of time right now for internal introspection going on in the Miami field office and or any other agents from other field offices that came in, but rather let's do this job right. They clearly understand the public scrutiny that will be involved, the gravity of the situation, and of course what's coming next, which will be endless rhetoric from Donald Trump about how horrible the FBI is and how this is a targeted fishing expedition. What we don't know, of course, is really what the substance of this is. We don't know if this is connected to January 6th or whether this is connected to the National Archives investigation of the top secret and secret documents that Trump allegedly squirreled away at Mar-A-Lago. But it may be helpful, if you want, if you haven't done this already, to just walk through the process of a federal agent obtaining a search warrant, if you want to just go through that and what it means and what it doesn't mean. So it simply means that the agents decided, and of course at this level, when you're talking about a former president, this will be cleared at the highest level, not only of the FBI, but the U.S. Department of Justice, likely cross the desk of the Attorney General of the United States. And you have to go to a United States magistrate with a prosecutor, an assistant U.S. attorney, and you have to say, we have evidence, probable cause, that a federal crime has been violated. And number two, that evidence of that crime is located in the location we wish to search. That's the big one, right? And so a magistrate or judge has to look at that and go, and by the way, you know, a magistrate or a judge, you ask about what's going on in the heads of FBI agents. Imagine the federal judge or magistrate that may have been gotten out of bed this morning. I've done that before, right? And he's reading through a lengthy affidavit, and he's got to like have his coffee or her coffee and go through it and go, holy cow, that's Mar-A-Lago, right? And I'm going to sign off on this. And so he has to ask the question, how do you know there's evidence of this crime inside that building? And that's where very interesting discussions occur, like, hey, we have a source that says it's in a safe, what we're looking for, or we have a source that says it's under the bed, right? And then the parameters of the search warrant really kind of constrain where you can look. So, I mean, if you're looking for a car, you're not going to be looking in the breadbasket. And so you can't just tear the place apart unless you're looking for very small devices and things. So, you know, we don't know what's happening here, but we know it's of grave significance. We know it's federal, not state or county. And we know that Trump will, of course, lash out starting about right now.
And Frank, I want to ask you one other question real quick. You're going to be staying with us. Is how long does this take? I mean, frankly, you know, when we see raids, we tend to see them on the news, or if we see them on a television show, the raid goes in, we see people go in the building, and then, you know, you go to commercial break. Are they going to be camped out there for a while? Are they ordering pizza because they've got to go? I mean, Mar-A-Lago is a huge location. How long will this raid likely last? Or do you think it's, you know, a precision situation where they go in, they know it's right behind this one hidden camera, and they'll just move a photograph and pull something out of a safe? How long do you think this raid will last?
So great question, because that will be a clue as to really what they're looking for. So if it's in and out, like, hey, we have somebody telling us the documents we're looking for are in a safe, we get the safe open, we're out. That's all we're going to be allowed to do. If this drags on for hours, which, by the way, some white-collar searches, corporate-type searches, healthcare fraud, where you're searching an entire hospital administration system for evidence of systemic fraud, that's going to go on for days. So I understand there's some reporting that Trump has issued some kind of a statement. I don't know if he included in his statement whether the agents came and went. We should key in on that. How long were they there? How specific was this? How short was it, or how long is it? So, again, it depends, Jason.
I'm joined now by NBC News correspondent Vaughn Hilliard. Vaughn, thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is quite the day, quite unexpected. What is the mood and attitude down there now? Are people shocked? Look, I remember when the former president was in the hospital and there were crowds of people, wearing MAGA clothing and flag underwear and everything else like that, running around praying for him. Is that the scene that we see surrounding Mar-A-Lago at this point, or are people still in shock?
I think it's a good question what's happening in Mar-A-Lago right now. We're actually just outside of Milwaukee right now because there's a major primary happening here. Trump was here over the weekend in the greater Milwaukee area here, backing Tim Michels, who is one of these election-denying candidates who is running for governor and could have his hands on the certification process in 2024. And I think that's where all of this hits here. I'm reaching out to multiple Trump sources here right now. I am told by a source familiar that the former president is currently in New York City. The exact location I do not have at this time here. He and his family have not been in Mar-A-Lago over the course of this summer. They have been staying in Bedminster. He did fly back to New Jersey this weekend after attending CPAC in Dallas. But then I know at some point here since then, he made his way to New York City, where he is at right now. I mean, essentially, the former president was breaking this news himself here. And I think to your question, it's providing the context of this moment here. Donald Trump, for years, has been setting up an American voting population to question the legitimacy of its investigation agencies. And he has successfully gotten elected leaders to echo those reservations and the suggestions that the deep state was out to get him. Just take Wyoming. Next Tuesday is Liz Cheney's primary against Trump-backed Harriet Hageman. And I was in Wyoming in May when the former president was there, and Harriet Hageman stood on stage next to him and said, "Do not trust the FBI, the CIA, the NSA." So when you are looking at where millions of Americans have been getting their news and the sources in which they trust, at the top of it for so many is the former president. There is a distrust in this. And so what you just saw the former president lay out in this lengthy statement, he called it an unannounced raid. Of course, it was approved by a judge here. And ultimately, there was probable cause for the judge to grant this search warrant of the former president's residency here. And yet at the same time, you have seen the former president call this a witch hunt. He has sown distrust in the media. He has sown distrust in the government. He has sown distrust in our elections here. And the question that we have over these next 3 months is, where is the American electorate stand? Will they follow the lead of this former president? Will you see Republican leaders up on Capitol Hill step away from the former president and say, maybe we should take a moment to see what the Department of Justice has come up with? Again, we don't know if the former president himself is the subject of this investigation. We do not know what they were looking for here. That is important context to all of this. At the same time, Donald Trump has made himself a political martyr and has suggested that he is going to run for president again as such here in order to save America, in his words, from the radical left. This is a political moment as much as it is an investigatory one in the eyes of Donald Trump.
Thanks, Vaughn Hilliard, Dana Milbank, and Kurt Bardella.